let me say a little something about who I am. I had to write a poem today. It's moving day. And I was riding along, and these words came to me, and I had to pull the motorcycle over and write this poem. And I've always been a bit of a loner. Now I'm a nomad. I'm living a very nomadic life, and I really enjoy it. I'm my place there. I haven't had a fixed address in quite a while, and I also haven't paid rent in the last 5 months. So it's been interesting to be observers wherever I go and let that be enough. And that's kind of a goal I shot for 10 years or 15 years ago now when I lived for a year without using money. Anyway, going back further than that, I've always been a loner and done my own thing. And when I was young, I grew up, and my backyard was up against 100 acres of high hat cattle property. So it's all these um, palmettos and oak trees and pines, and that was where I grew up in those woods, often, usually by myself, just wandering and developing my relationship with God, really. We had a pretty good relationship from the get go. And Jesus was my first hero before Luke Skywalker or Spider Man or Yogi Bear. There was Jesus, and he was a loner as well. I mean, yeah, he eventually got 12 disciples, but the reason he had those 12 disciples was because he spent a lot of time being a loner and doing his own thing and taking his own journey to become who he was. And I've done that as well. And because I followed his suit, you know, one of the things I got about him was, he said, "Come follow me." It scared me a lot when I was younger. Son of man has no place to lay his head, and we should go carry nothing, and all that. It's kind of frightening to be thinking about homelessness when you're a kid, but I did, and I have, and it's been quite the ride. Anyhow, yeah. So around sixth grade, I played hooky a couple times and lied about it. So I got sent to a evangelical Christian school operated by Temple Baptist Church called West Florida Christian School. And we had Bible class 5 days a week. We had chapel services twice a week. And then about 15, I got involved in the Southern Baptist Church. I'd grown up Lutheran. Martin Luther was the first, Protestant. So again, I'm a bit of a rebel, just part of my roots. And um, I started going to the Baptist church when I was 15. And then I just was all out for Jesus, full on evangelical. And I loved the whole thing. Um, I was not much of an evangelist, though. I wasn't. I did it a couple of times because it's kind of like a rite of passage kind of thing. Uh, you know, Sharing the Lord with somebody or leading them to the Lord is what we called it. And uh, I've never really been fond of the whole Romans Road thing, and always had a bit of a problem with some of those ideas. And eventually, I got to the point in my mid 20s where I was like, "Yeah, this does not make any sense anymore," and I'd left Christianity altogether. But I still had an affinity for Christ. When I was in my 20s, I had bumper sticker said "Real men love Jesus," and so I still love Jesus. I just could not handle Christianity anymore, and so I walked away and I explored Buddhism and Taoism and anything I could explore as I hitchhiked cross country a couple of times, visited different um, yoga ashrams and Buddhist monasteries and eco villages and intentional communities basically around the country, and did all kinds of adventures. I mean, I've traveled the country back and forth 14 times so far by car, motorcycle, hitchhiking, train, airplane, any way you can think of. I've seen a lot of this country. I've motorcycled to all 48 states in the last 4 years, and I intend to do it again in the next two. So we'll see what happens with that. But or at least three, maybe three. Yeah. So anyhow, I where was I? Oh yeah. So yeah, always been a bit of a loner. It's not always worked for me. And when I broke with Christianity, I fully on embraced the sinful lifestyle. And I was using tobacco a lot. It's been a huge, I want to say, struggle of mine because I haven't struggled with it. I've just given in usually to that, and alcohol and marijuana and anything I could be addicted to. I was. No, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I didn't try a lot of things that seemed really stupid, like, you know, meth or pills or stuff like that. I kept it, as natural as possible, but still made a lot of bad choices on that over these last several years, and had to work through a lot of shame because of that, and work up my consciousness against to where I could get to a point where I could reason a little bit better, and love a little bit better, and have more joy and more peace and that sort of thing. So comes back around to, again, even though I don't call myself a Christian, and in the last year or so, I started seeing a lot of this whole deconstruction movement, and all these people who were like, coming to grips with their faith the way I did years ago, and I just kind of walked away. And a lot of them are just jumping headlong into atheism, as there is no God at all. Okay, and I get it, but I also breathe, and all these cells are put together, and I got this cool shirt, and you know how are we all here if there's not this creative force making it happen? So just because I couldn't understand it didn't mean I didn't believe in God. I just didn't believe in the Judeo-Christian God. So I saw a lot of these videos people have been posting and things people have been saying about deconstructing their faith. And so it's part of this thing that for the last 10 years or so, I've been working on this idea I've called the unbroken path. And for one of the books I wrote last year was weaving together those 26 different paradigms of understanding, one for each letter of the alphabet. Steve McAlphabet is my author name now. And so I use, Jung and Freud and Erickson and uh, Joseph Campbell and Jesus and Buddha and all these different ways of understanding our world, and the different ways we have of progression, and of anyhow, it's a great book. You should read it one of these days. Free on the website stevemc.xyz if you want to read an early edition. But the part of that is also, as I said, weaving together the Beatitudes of Jesus into that framework and what those things mean really, and how they're intertied with living the better life that we want to. And then I've been thinking a lot over the last few years about doing something with just the words of Christ. I kind of want to make it a performance piece, but that's a lot of words. So I may just do it as a poem or something. But I did write a book called Jesus Said Stuff. And I went through all four of the biblical gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. So I put the chapters as, because Mark was written first, say about 70 AD. And 30, 40, how many years is that? 40 years after Christ, it was finally written down. And I think there probably were earlier gospels. I think there were other stories that had been written about him and other perspectives of it, but they all got burned, is what I'm thinking. The Roman Catholic Church really enjoyed taking control of that narrative, and these are the four that remain. So I still believe that God has those words there for a good purpose. I still think they can be used as a good purpose. So I started going through Mark and reading all the things that Jesus said, because they have this red letter edition they started doing in 1901. And I took all those red letters and I saw what he said in Mark. And then if he said the same thing or something similar in Matthew, Luke, or John, then I would include that too. So the first chapter is all mainly Mark, and the second chapter is mostly Matthew. So I went through Matthew and what everything Matthew said, and then everything that Luke and John agreed with him on, then I put that in there too. And then I got down to largely Luke, and what Luke had to say, whatever he was left, and how he agreed with John. And then it was just John, because like 90% of John is completely original in art and the other gospels, but it was written in like 110, so it was like 70 years after the fact. I know as a Christian, we're taught to believe that they're all perfect, but um, turns out there are a lot of errors in there and a lot of fallibilities in the way the story is told. And you really got to think about, I really had to think about what is important to believe about this. When I was brought up in a Lutheran church, every Sunday we would recite the Nicene Creed again and again and again, and it would say, there's one God, it's a Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And Jesus was born of a virgin. He died. He rose again for our sins. And oh, and there's one holy apostolic Catholic Church. One. All you get. So, I grew up believing that was truth, not recognizing, no, that's propaganda. That's government sanctioned faith limitation. It's a belief system. Um, and since then, I've realized, oh, yeah, well, I think Christ is more than that. And I think those words, whether they're accurate or correct or not, still have a lot to offer the world. So this book is Jesus said stuff and highlighting those things he said. And I think you're going to be very surprised on the things that he said and that we need to reconsider in the church, should we still want to do that. And let's see. Oh, and then that's what I did recently. And then I did a year without using money. Back after I got divorced, I was married for 3 years and 11 months back in the late 2000 aughts. And that just didn't work out. But I love her for letting me go wander again and be the nomad that I am. So then I decided to live for a year without using money. Really got nomadic at that point and doubled down on it. And I didn't quite make it, so I didn't make a big deal out of it. But I looked for other alternatives to wealth besides the Federal Reserve note. And there really are a lot. There are a lot of amazing ways to contribute to the world and participate in the world and develop relationships and find purpose and all that kind of stuff has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve Bank at all. So it was really a wonderful year. And since then, kind of been building back. And I had a 10-year hiatus where I didn't use any gasoline for a whole decade and just bicycled everywhere I went. And gradually started doing some more work and became a tour guide here in Sarasota and a substitute teacher at Bay Haven Elementary or School of Basics Plus. And then, yeah, the last 4 years I've ridden around on my motorcycle. So it's been quite the ride, quite the ride. And today, as I said, I've been doing a house sitting gig all year. Last year, the first 4 years of riding around on the motorcycle, I went to, what do you call it? Couchsurfing.com. And that gave me like over 50 people I've stayed with over the last 4 years as I've traveled on my way. And they just had the courtesy and graciousness to invite travelers to stop and stay with them. And, they get the same kind of courtesies when they travel around as well. And it's this really wonderful way to travel and meet people and see other perspectives. So highly recommend it if you're interested. But this last year, my brother and sister-in-law got me a membership to Trusted House Sitters. And this is my 10th house sit in the last year, and largely pet sitting, taking care of the pets, for free. But I've had these great places to stay. I mean, I've been here for about a week and a half or so. I was in Atlanta for 2 weeks, in Nashville for 2 weeks, at Asheville, Washington D.C., Philadelphia, New Hampshire. I was a month in New Hampshire in a Christmas tree farm, writing this Jesus Said Stuff book. Anyway, so here we are today, the last day here. I've got 9 days at the Bayshore house where I'm staying. This wonderful house. A friend of mine has been letting me be her house sitter for quite a while there, and that's worked out pretty well as well. And I'll do some more videos from there, maybe later today, maybe probably tomorrow. Anyway, so I'm coming home from my first road trip over there to drop off all my clothes and come back here to hang out with the dogs while until the owners get back a little later today. And I had to write this poem down. Let me say a little something about the world that we're in the hopes that when it ends, we can begin it again. It can be a real challenge to find your directive, but it gets a lot easier when you can change your perspective. You can think that you are in it as a separate being, and you can see it's all you if you change your seeing. No matter what we make, we always make a mess. That it's a part of creation we have to accept, I guess. Sure, life would be better without pollution or pain, but you can't get any rainbows if you don't make some rain. The world is a mess, whether we like it or not, but it's also filled with beauty, and we've got a lot of matter to work with as we rethink and rebuild. There will be some hard times and folks will get killed in all of the mayhem as things prepare to explode, as our towers crumble and institutions erode. What we once thought was truth, when we thought very little, is not as strong as we thought and actually quite brittle. But true truth is deeper than the words we create. And as it comes to light, we need not berate how bad the world is when it seems dark and bleak. The night that we bring is the light that we seek. So don't blame the world for being a mess. Shine your light brightly so that you can bless the creation we are part of with the day we are given. So tomorrow we may have a new earth and a new heaven. I didn't cry. I really thought I was going to cry because, man, I was crying earlier. But I hope that made you cry. I hope it makes us all cry. And realize that, this is what I've realized about Christ, is that we're it. So when somebody's asked, are you the second coming of Christ or something? Say, yeah, tag, you're it. We're all playing hide and seek. God playing hide and seek. Bring the light. That's what you're here for. You shine. Radiance and beauty and talent, and I've hid my light a lot, and I'm ready to let it shine. So, love y'all.